Hi, I'm Franco Luna Puma Podcast. You're listening to Teka Teka News. Balitang thinking, hindi breaking. In this episode,
Para po sa amin, kapag nawala yung Ayala Avenue bike lanes, parang nagbibigay po siya ng parang ehemplo sa iba na pwede nang tanggalin yung proteksyon na deserve ng lahat ng siklista. No? At napakahalaga rin pong matandaan na dumami po yung bikers ngayong pandemya.
Makati has decided to merge the bicycle lane and PUV lane along Ayala Avenue, causing a public uproar.
So we're here at the Sultan Kudrat Monument at the Ayala Triangle in Makati, where at least 100 cyclists and cycling advocates are here protesting the city's initial plan to merge the bike lane with the PUV lane along Ayala Avenue. Their placards read, "Bantay bike lanes and make it safer Makati." Sabi nga nila, "We're here to show people that we're commuters too, and that we deserve dignity on our roads." They also said this was a way to show the public how many people want safer streets.
This protest was the second of two demonstrations that week. Here's Ken Abante, one of the organizers of what they called Make It Safer Makati, a community ride/protest.
We were all very confused. And the reason why we say this is the Ayala Avenue bike lanes, very symbolic po siya sa mga cyclists. No? Ito po yung isa sa mga pinakamalapad at pinakaligtas na bike lane sa Pilipinas. At kapag ito ay nawala, at ngayon po ay pinapinaliit na po siya, no? Pinakitid na ang Ayala Avenue bike lanes, at ang ibang mga sections nito, inalis na yung protective bollards. No? Even before the February 15 announced effective date.
The decision to merge the bike and PUV lanes along Ayala Avenue means that yes, cyclists would have to share the road with buses and jeepneys again. At the same time, the bike lane's protective bollards were removed without warning ahead of the scheduled date. At the protest, cars and jeepneys honked their horns in support. There were even families and children biking together. Make It Makati, which is the official tagline of Makati and not to be confused with a community protest, announced not long after the first rally that it would be deferring the merging of the lanes to March 6, but only so they could add quote-unquote enhanced measures for commuter safety. Still, it's a big blow to the community. It was the gold standard of bike lanes after all. Let's hear from Transport Planner Ira Cruz. He's director of Alt Mobility Philippines, and he says the move could send signals to other cities in Metro Manila.
Early on in the pandemic, when they introduced it, it was very rare for properties or cities to allocate as much space as they did for bikers. At that time, it was a full lane, and normally cities would only allocate half a lane for bikers. So it was the first of its kind, or at least one of the first of its kind, to really offer bikers a full lane. We're not just really talking about the bike lanes in Ayala, but that we fear that it might set the precedent for other cities. If Ayala is able to pull this out, then it might set the tone for other cities.
Make It Makati, by the way, is a collaboration between the local government, Ayala Land, and the Makati Commercial Estate Association. Officials said merging the lanes was meant to accommodate the growing number of commuters going in and out of the Makati CBD. They said it would also quote-unquote improve traffic flow in the city. But Ira says that's not the problem.
Even if they follow their plans, the real culprit here is that there's too much space allocated for for inefficient modes of transportation, such as cars, no? That really only that occupy a lot of space, but really only transport less than 10% of the population. In that sense, if you're really just trying to shift the road usage between whatever is already being allocated for public utility vehicles and bikes, then you're really not going to be making any significant impact. So it's not just about mobility; it's really also all about safety. And then it's not just about reducing the space kasi in Ayala. What they're doing is two things actually. They're reducing the amount of space given to bikers, and they're also removing the physical protection.
On social media, cyclists point out that the progress in the last 2 years has been dismantled. Others have reported, for example, that the bike racks near office entrances just aren't there anymore. But more than just the step back in mobility, the question is, could merging bike lanes and jeepney lanes directly cause cyclist fatalities?
Definitely.
That's Tina Batalla, one of the organizers of Make It Safer Makati at the protest.
Admittedly, I had around three close call road crashes yesterday from different cars and motorcycles simply because there were no proper bike lanes and on the road. Even if there was paint is not protection. The light is not enough to keep us safe from especially very irresponsible drivers. And I hate to think that so many have already died, so many have gotten injured, and for those who stayed alive, the fear, the trauma is still in their bodies. This is not just about bike lanes. This is about life in our cities. This is about making our home a better and a safer place to live in.
Anyone who's had to brave Metro Manila's mean streets knows this. Cars and motorcycles often drive into bike lanes when they're not blocked off by bollards and barriers. Here's Ira again.
And there was a very good level of enforcement in Ayala. In fact, I witnessed one scene where a taxi entered the bike lane, and the MAPA and then the enforcer really pulled the taxi out and made sure that the taxi followed the rule. So that was the level of enforcement, and that was the level of quality that they were offering, which is why it was such a huge surprise that all of a sudden they made this announcement without any consultation from the public.
We're pausing for a quick break now. When we return, we'll tell you how Quezon City achieved 0 fatalities in all of last year. According to a social weather station survey, bike-owning households outnumbered car-owning households 4 to 1 in 2022. And according to the 2022 bike count of the Institute for Climate and Sustainable Cities, almost 200,000 Filipinos cycle for transportation every day, not just as a hobby. So why dismantle the bike lanes now?
Yeah, it's very disappointing because we felt that we made a lot of headway during the pandemic in being able to introduce new modes of transportation, and we have seen the numbers, and so it's very disappointing for us to be regressing.
Now let me give you another example. Quezon City. In 2022, Quezon City said it posted 0 bike fatalities for the entire year. That's partly because of a task force on active transportation that deploys enforcers on bikes to the different bike lanes in the city. Yeah, that's a big deal. Consider this. The MMDA recorded almost 2,400 road crashes involving cyclists in 2021. That was up from some 1,700 before the pandemic. I got to speak with Corazon Medes about the initiative. She's head of the city's Green Transport Office, which handles their bike lanes.
Especially here in Quezon City, we need to educate the motorists the cyclists, even the pedestrians. Even the pedestrians. Kasi, minsan nagbabanggaan yung pedestrian and cyclist, no? So, we need the education and, of course, the enforcement. Takot din sila ang mga motorista kasi there are lots of talaga violators na being apprehended, no, malaki rin ang may apprehension, wala namang namamatay o nadidisgrasya ng mga siklista along the bike lanes. That is because we have that barriers. Have you seen that orange barriers? Isa yan sa mga nilalagay ng city para maging safe yung mga siklista natin.
The enforcers are also deputized, which means they can issue tickets to drivers and cyclists alike for any violations. Corazon says the task force records around 20 bike lane violations every day. The most common one? Cars obstructing the lanes. But it's worth mentioning that QC also has shared lanes without barriers in the Scout area.
Halimbawa, masikip ang kalsada, shared lane lang po yan para makadaan yung other vehicles doon sa bisikla. Kaya lang nga, kung titingnan mo, medyo delikado sa ating mga siklista. Pero sa awa ng Diyos naman, wala pa namang nadidisgrasya na namatay, na nag-road crash ng mga siklista natin.
Cora says they were a last resort because of the lack of space, but she admits it's a problem they're hoping to address soon.
Kasi naman, sa kalsada naman, hindi naman sinasadya kasi engineering factor yan, ano? So, pinagbibigyan naman lahat na makadaan. Kaya lang po, sa shared lane, alam ng mga siklista, alam ng mga motorista na shared lane yan. Kailangan priority yung mga siklista. Alam naman ng mga drivers na pag nakita nila yan, bike lane yan. Sila mag-slow down sila because of the presence of the cyclists. Di ba? Pag sa maliit lang yan. Sabi nga ng iba, bakit maglagay pa sa maliit? Maliit na nga, maglalagay pa. Kung grabe ang comment ng tao. Ito yung bike lane design dapat. May pedestrian, dito yung tsaka dito. Dapat ganon. Ito ng buffer naman to. Yun talaga dapat. Huh?
Zero casualties in 2022 is certainly a success story, but when it comes to keeping cyclists safe in sharrows or shared lanes, hindi lang pwede ang awa ng Diyos. Studies around the world have shown that shared lanes are actually more dangerous for bikers than having no infrastructure at all. Here's Alt Mobility's Ira Cruz again.
I don't think we need to look into the experience of other countries to know that sharrows or shared lanes or painted pavement in the Philippines does not work. All you need to do is get on a bike and bike to any location, to any city that has painted bike lanes, and you'd know in the first maybe in the first 3 minutes of your bike that it's not giving you protection.
In the meantime, Cora Mendez of the QC Green Transport Office says they're looking into more bike lanes in Quezon City.
In fact, we have to conduct another bike count para ma-justify na talaga na we need to add more bike lane. We need to educate the people, the citizens of Quezon City na ang nais ng ating city. Kasi number one is not only because we want it, the city government wants it. Pero they doesn't know, those people na nagbabike, mga nagtatrabaho yan. They're also paying their tax. Only that, their way of going to their work is by way of the bikes. Kasi hindi naman nagbibisikleta yan. Ang iba just for fun, just for pleasure. Pero mostly, yung nagbabike are working. Imagine, yung pandemic, grabe, doon nagsimula. Imagine, nauubos pa nga yung mga bisikleta sa tindahan.
In Makati, things are much more uncertain. All cyclists can hope for at this stage is that their protests don't fall on deaf ears.
So we really feel that there's a good opportunity between now and March 6 for the leadership of Ayala Land to sit down with civil society members and stakeholders and ordinary commuters to be able to find a balance between between everybody's objective. And I think at the end of the day, we're all working towards better mobility for everybody.
We leave you with Ken Abante, one of the organizers behind Make It Safer Makati, with the final word.
Dahil yung protection po na yun ay spells life and death for all of us who cycle. Yung mga ordinaryong manggagawa, yung mga ordinaryong mamamayan, kami na nagtatrabaho dito, at lahat ng uri ng mga nagbabike, kahit mga commuters kasama doon. No? Sinasabi nga po namin, protected bike lanes protect us all. Kaya po kami nagalit, na-disappoint sa kawalan ng consultation doon po sa nangyari. Ang tanong po namin, bakit kami kinakalimutan?
And that was today's episode of Teka Teka News. Again, I'm Franco Luna. This episode was produced by Kat Ventura and edited by Pidoy Blanco. If you like this episode, share it with a friend or two. And of course, don't forget to follow Teka Teka News and Puma Podcast on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube. Thanks for listening.